Hello, I am here to critique this structure and skin sculpture by Rachel Davis. So, looking at this piece for the first time, the very first thing I notice is all these sharp, angular planes shooting out in different directions. It feels very light, almost like it's balancing on these thin, stick like supports. The material looks like some kind of cardstock or super thin paper, maybe tracing paper or something. They're attached to wooden dowels, and each plane looks like a long triangular shape, and they all seem to radiate from some central points, almost like everything is anchored in a couple cores in the middle. From this angle, it reminds me of wings opening or maybe some kind of mechanical bird that's caught mid movement. The whole thing has a really airy feeling because so much of it is open space. There's a lot of negative space happening. All these voids created between the sticks and the paper planes, the shadows underneath it are a really nice addition and somewhat dramatic. And because of the light hitting those extended angles, it throws some really crisp, elongated shadows on the surface. Looking closer at the construction, the first thing that stands out is that this is definitely a structure with skin relationship. The thin wooden sticks from the structural framework are almost like bones, and the triangular paper planes act as the skin. What's interesting is that the artist didn't cover every section with skin. Some planes are fully covered while other areas are left exposed, so you can see straight through the skeletal framework. Those voided out areas actually create even more tension between what's solid and what's transparent. The balance between the skinned and unskinned areas gives the piece a sense of contrast. Some surfaces read as solid volumetric forms, while others dissolve into linear outlines. It turns the empty spaces into active parts of the design. You get these little windows where the viewer's eye goes deeper into the piece, almost like the structure is breathing or expanding. There's also a strong use of repetition. Most of the planes are similar triangular forms, but they're rotated and angled in different directions, which creates a sense of movement and rhythm. The linear supports act almost like delineated contour lines, defining the edges of the volume even when the skin isn't present. The whole thing feels really dramatic because the planes angle upward, sideways, downward, directing my eye in a sweeping arc throughout the sculpture. The light plays an important role too. The paper planes catch highlights really evenly, while the uncovered stick structures cast these long, narrow shadows. It creates this kind of interplay between the solid and delicate, filled and empty, and the presence and absence. In terms of meaning, the sculpture gives me a feeling of unfolding or opening outward because the skinned planes radiate from the center. And it almost feels like something is expanding or taking flight. The exposed structural areas add to that feeling, like the piece is in transition, not fully formed, or maybe shedding or growing new surfaces. It also leans into biomorphic abstraction. Even though the shapes are geometric, the combination of the skin and the internal structure make it feel a bit like a creature or an organism caught mid transformation, maybe even a bird. Or on the opposite end, it could be interpreted as architectural, like scaffolding or a futuristic structure being built or deconstructed. But overall, I feel like it has this kind of energy of growth and motion and openness as it extends into space. Overall, I think the piece is really successful in a way it balances structure and skin. The artist made some thoughtful choices about which areas to cover and which to expose, and that adds a lot of interest. The incomplete skin makes the viewer aware of how the sculpture is actually built, which ties back nicely to the goals of this assignment, I think. I think the strongest element is definitely the sense of movement and expansion. Even though the shapes are very controlled and geometric, the way they radiate outward makes the whole sculpture feel alive. I also feel like the craftsmanship looks careful and the structural lines are clean. And the intersections where the planes meet, the sticks seems intentional. If I were to push it further, maybe experimenting with even more contrast in the scale or bolder choices in where the skin appears or disappears could, I think, enhance the rhythm. But as it stands, I think it's a compelling piece that uses repetition, light, voids, and structural lines in a really effective way.